The time by Caracas is 6 p.m. and this is CBX Business News. The business news headlines are brought to you by QMax Wealth Management, making more possible. Economic ties, billion-dollar budget, and support for Japan's yen. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Wednesday, August 5, 2026. I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for joining us. Coming up, bilateral agreements between Jamaica and Ghana are expected to strengthen economic cooperation and support long-term development. Also ahead, Dominica has unveiled a $1.24 billion Eastern Caribbean dollar national budget backed by a stronger fiscal outlook and a projected 2.2% primary surplus. And later, the United States says its decision to support Japan's yen will strengthen economic ties between the two countries. Stay with us as we unpack these stories and more right after the break. The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. Jamaica and Ghana are strengthening economic cooperation through a series of bilateral agreements aimed at supporting workforce development, trade, and long-term economic growth. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness says the agreements establish a framework for expanding collaboration in sectors critical to both countries' development. Speaking during a joint sitting of Parliament on Tuesday, attended by President of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, as part of his state visit to Jamaica, Holness says the latest agreements include the recruitment of Ghanaian health professionals, a defense cooperation pact, and an expanded arts and culture agreement, all of which are expected to deepen economic collaboration between the two countries.
After more than 2 decades of dormancy, the third Jamaica-Ghana Permanent Joint Commission on Cooperation was convened in Accra in May of this year, led jointly by your Minister Samuel Ablakwa and our Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith. And this has given fresh impetus to the relationship. Its tangible outcomes included a bilateral agreement for the recruitment of Ghanaian health professionals to serve in Jamaica's public health system, a memorandum of understanding on defense cooperation, and an amendment to the agreement on cooperation in the field of arts and culture. These agreements provide a strong framework for expanding collaboration in sectors that are critical to the development and prosperity of both our nations.
Holness says the partnership must now extend beyond traditional diplomacy by creating new opportunities for trade and investment.
as we both work for the economic emancipation and economic independence of our people, our partnership must also extend focus on the realm of trade, investment, and shared prosperity. Mr. President, on your visit to the Port of Kingston yesterday, you saw the significant investments we have made to establish Kingston as a premier logistics and transshipment hub in the region. Similarly, Ghana, through its own port expansion, is the premier gateway to West Africa. The alignment is clear. By connecting our ports, our peoples, our markets, we can together build a West Africa, Caribbean, Latin America trade logistics corridor.
That was Prime Minister of Jamaica, Dr. Andrew Holness. And in other news, Mayberry Jamaican Equities has returned to profitability after posting an $874 million Jamaican dollar profit in the second quarter of 2026, a positive swing from the $1.36 billion loss in the first 3 months of the year. Speaking during the company's second quarter earnings call on Tuesday, Senior Vice President of Investment Banking, Dan Theok, says improving market valuations helped to drive the turnaround, although it remains in the red for the first half of 2026.
We'll note that MG returned to profitability in Q2 with a profit of $874 million, which is a decisive swing from the $1.3 billion loss for the same period last year. For the first quarter of this year, so $874 million profit in Q2 versus the $1.3 billion loss in Q1. And this is primarily as a result of the improvements in fair valuations and of our investments and associates on the stock market. And we'll certainly talk about the top 6 and how we're feeling about those stocks, those equity positions, and how we see the future going forward.
Despite an overall half-year net loss, Theok says improving market conditions are expected to support stronger profitability in the months ahead.
Overall, though, we did have a net loss of $1.2 billion for the full half year when you factor in the $873 million gain in Q2 versus the $1.4 billion loss in Q1. But that's still substantially better than the $3.6 billion loss we had for the first half of 2025. So substantial reduction there, and we can clearly see the market coming back, and are very excited about the next 2 quarters for 2026, where I'm going to predict that MG will continue to grow in profitability.
And while the company has returned to quarterly profitability, Mayberry believes the broader stock market is also poised for a recovery in the months ahead. Mayberry Jamaican Equities says Jamaica's stock market is poised for a stronger second half of 2026, citing improving economic conditions, post-hurricane reconstruction, and increased capital expected to flow into the market in the coming months. Speaking during the same earnings call, Senior Vice President of Investments, Dan Theok, says several indicators point to a sustained market recovery, including infrastructure spending and renewed business activity.
But I do believe, with us going through 2 really bad storms, hurricanes, and we've seen how fast the recovery has been with the amount of capital investment, grant funding that has come into the country. We know Jamaica has proven itself to be a poster child of the IMF in terms of quick recovery coming out of COVID. I expect no less for the recovery coming out of Hurricane Melissa. There will be a lot of capital coming into the market, lots of infrastructure projects. Then we have the BNS share buyback, over $55 billion of cash coming into the equity market. So
That was Mayberry Senior Vice President for Investment Banking, Dan Theok. Meanwhile, Chief Executive Officer of Mayberry Group, Gary Peart, also expects liquidity from Scotia Group Jamaica's planned share buyout to provide an additional boost to the equity market.
When the payment is made in November, it's going to help to move the stock market significantly higher than where it is now. And so one of the things, as you know, we're trying to figure out is which stocks are going to be the beneficiary of the Scotia Pales. We've seen where the market, has pushed stocks like Carreras to levels that we've never seen before.
$35. Wow, makes no sense to
Yeah,
me. I'm going to be honest.
The combination of the potential for new businesses. I heard a story about another highway segment that they're negotiating, but also this liquidity. You're getting capital gains, you're getting good dividends. So those are no-brainers.
That was CEO of Mayberry Group Limited, Gary Peart. Wigton Energy Limited reported a net profit of $168.9 million for the quarter ended June 30, down 35% from $259.2 million in the corresponding period last year. The company attributed the decline to lower electricity generation and reduced other income. Electricity production fell 2% to 49.2 million kilowatt hours, while total revenue declined 9.3% to 808.2 million from 890.9 million a year earlier, reflecting lower electricity sales and a reduction in other income. Despite the weaker performance, finance expenses dropped 44.8% to 43.2 million as the company continued to reduce debt. Wigton says it remains focused on improving operational efficiency while advancing renewable energy projects to strengthen future earnings. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Wednesday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 110 stocks, of which 53 advanced, 39 declined, and 18 traded firm. Leading the winners are Cygnus Credit Investments 10% preference shares Class H, Cargo Handlers, Palace Amusement Company, and Main Event Entertainment Group, while leading the losers are MFS Capital Partners, ISP Finance Services, Proven Group, and Sagicor Real Estate X Fund. The main index advanced by 1,615.50 points to close at 376,719.18 points. The junior market index advanced by 39.27 points to close at 2,925.67 points. It's time for the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. In today's Market Education feature, we will be speaking on Yield on Cost, YOC. Yield on Cost, YOC, measures the annual dividend income from a stock relative to its original purchase price. It is calculated by dividing the current annual dividend per share by the initial purchase price. For example, a stock bought at $20 that now pays $1.50 annually has a YOC of 7.5%. Unlike current dividend yield, which uses the stock's present market price, YOC shows the income return on the investor's original cost. Current yield is more useful for comparing today's investment opportunities. That was the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, Tease the Senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. Dominica has tabled a $1.24 billion Eastern Caribbean dollar budget for the 2026-27 fiscal year, with the government projecting a 2.2% primary surplus as it seeks to sustain economic growth and maintain fiscal discipline. Presenting the 2026-27 national budget in Parliament on Tuesday, Minister of Finance Dr. Irvin McIntyre outlined the EC $1.24 billion spending plan.
Tomorrow, I therefore present the budget proposal for fiscal year 2026-2027, totaling EC $1.24 billion. Mr. Speaker, I propose a total recurrent expenditure of EC $675.1 million for fiscal year 2026-2027. It covers legally mandated expenditure and those required for the day-to-day operations of the state. For example, payment of public service salaries, utilities and rent, the procurement of supplies and equipment, maintaining our roads and operating our education, health, national security and justice systems.
McIntyre outlined the recurrent allocations for ministries and departments, with the Ministry of Finance receiving the largest allocation, followed by Education, Health, and National Security and Legal Affairs.
Office of the President, $1.6 million. Integrity in Public Office, $0.5 million. The Public and Police Service Commission, $0.5 million. The Legislature, $1.3 million. Audit Department, $1.2 million. National Security and Legal Affairs, $67.1 million. Electoral Office, $1.7 million. Office of the Prime Minister, $8.4 million. Ministry of Finance, Economic Development, Climate Resilience and Social Security, $284.8 million. Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Blue and Green Economy, $9.2 million. Ministry of Education, Human Resource Planning, Vocational Training and National Excellence, $76.9 million. Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, $5.9 million. Ministry of Health, Wellness and Social Services, $75.4 million.
McIntyre says the budget is underpinned by a stronger fiscal position. He says higher tax revenue and continued economic growth have helped improve the government's finances, with a projected primary surplus of 2.2% for the new fiscal year.
From 2026 to 2027, government commits to an annual primary surplus of at least 2% of GDP, until the debt-to-GDP ratio declines to 60%. The current estimates project a surplus of 2.2%. That discipline preserves room to maintain essential services and respond to future.
That was Dominica's Minister of Finance, Dr. Irvin McIntyre. Guyana is targeting high food prices in its hinterland communities through transport and agricultural initiatives aimed at lowering the cost of living. President Dr. Irfan Ali says reducing logistics costs and boosting local food production will make food more affordable while creating new business opportunities. Addressing a public meeting in Region 1 recently, Ali says transportation costs are a major factor driving up food prices in hinterland communities. He says the government is exploring ways to improve the movement of goods and reduce food costs.
So when we examine the costs, you're paying for chicken, beef, and other important food items. It is clear that you're paying far above the market price. And when we talk to your leaders and residents, when we talk to the shop owners, their primary reason is the cost of transportation. But today, I want us to examine ways in which we can address the transportation challenges that lead to greater cost of living challenges, how we address the issue of food production and retail prices.
Ali outlined plans to support a community cargo transport business through the Guyana Development Bank. He says the initiative is expected to lower transportation costs while creating opportunities for young entrepreneurs.
But there are some opportunities for our young people. I was speaking to the Tushao, and we were talking about the possibility of having a goods launch from charity, bringing only food items and cargo in to the Muruka sub-district and Santa Rosa and these areas. One in which, through the Guyana Development Bank, when we start that, we can put together a consortium of young people who can develop this as a business, but a different type of business. A business with a social conscience and a business with social responsibility, so that we can have an arrangement to allow goods to come into the community at a fair transportation cost.
That was President of Guyana, Dr. Irfan Ali. Now to news from Trinidad and Tobago. The latest Central Statistical Office, CSO, Labor Force Survey has prompted Trinidad and Tobago's Planning Minister, Dr. Kennedy Swaratsingh, to defend the country's labor market, saying the nearly 6,000 jobs lost during the first quarter of 2026 reflect seasonal employment patterns rather than a weakening economy. Swaratsingh says while the survey showed employment declined between the fourth quarter of 2025 and the first quarter of this year, employment actually increased by approximately 5,100, rising from 558,900 in the first quarter of 2025 to 554,000 in the corresponding period this year. He says the quarter-to-quarter decline reflects the end of temporary Christmas jobs, particularly in the wholesale and retail, hospitality and transportation sectors. The minister also noted that the labor force expanded by approximately 8,200 people over the year, with employment gains recorded in wholesale and retail, finance, insurance, real estate and business services, as well as community, social and personal services. He says the figures point to continued economic activity and should be assessed alongside longer-term labor market trends rather than in isolation. And it's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 17 securities, of which 3 advanced, 4 declined, and 10 traded firm. Today's winners are the West Indian Tobacco Company, CIBC Caribbean Bank, and Scotiabank Trinidad and Tobago, while leading the losers are National Enterprises, Trinidad and Tobago NGL, Endeavour Holdings, and First Citizens Group Financial Holdings. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All TNT Index declined by 1.55 points to close at 1,429.59. The Composite Index declined by 0.65 points to close at 1,005.17. The Cross-Listed Index advanced by 0.05 points to close at 77.22. The SME Index declined by 0.14 points to close at 75.56. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment is up next.
This project marks the celebration of our 30th Hall of Fame and aims to highlight the achievements, challenges, and invaluable lessons of those who have shaped and are shaping the future of our economy. Our aim is to celebrate the voices and stories of 30 remarkable leaders in Jamaica's private sector. Join us as we explore these narratives of resilience, leadership, and vision.
Welcome back. In international news, President Donald Trump says the United States is supporting Japan's currency as part of a broader effort to strengthen economic ties with one of its closest allies, arguing that the move serves both American financial interest and global economic stability. Speaking with reporters, Trump says Japan had requested assistance amid a weakening yen, describing the intervention as a signal of friendship between the two nations. He emphasized the long-standing relationship with Tokyo, while noting that the two countries maintain a strong financial cooperation.
Because we have a good relationship with Japan. We're very strong, very, very strong financially. They have a weakening yen, and they wanted a little bit of help, and we're always there for Japan.
Trump also asserted that the arrangement would provide a financial benefit to the United States, although he did not offer details on how the gains would be realized.
Financial benefit. It's also good for the world economy. But we make, like when we did with Argentina, like I criticized, we made $25 billion on that deal. With Venezuela, we make hundreds of billions of dollars. I make good deals. Intel, I made $75 billion for the country. I didn't make for me, I made for the country. Intel, I backed Intel. It's the hottest stock right now on the New York Stock, on the various stock exchanges. So we made about 75 to $80 billion. And Japan wanted to, it was really more than anything else, it was a signal of friendship.
That was U.S. President Donald Trump. The S&P Global U.S. Composite PMI climbed to 54.5 in July 2026, up from 51.9 in June, beating the preliminary estimate of 53.6 and marking the strongest expansion in U.S. private sector activity since October 2025. The improvement was led by stronger growth in the services sector, while manufacturing output remained on a solid expansion path. New orders rose at the fastest pace in 19 months. Business confidence reached its highest level since November 2025, and private sector employment returned to growth for the first time since April. Meanwhile, inflationary pressures intensified, with input costs rising at their fastest rate since November 2022, driving output price inflation to its highest level in a year. And finally, European equities ended earlier today on a mixed note, remaining near the record highs reached earlier in the week. The Euro Stoxx 50 edged slightly lower to 6,448, while the Stoxx Europe 50 gained 0.1% to close at 657. Siemens Energy finished little change despite reporting better than expected earnings and record order volumes, driven by strong demand for data center power infrastructure. S&P rose more than 1%, benefiting from positive momentum among U.S. software companies, while Bayer and argenx each advanced over 2%, leading gains in the pharmaceutical sector. On the downside, Infineon fell 5.7% after issuing guidance that disappointed investors, and DHL declined 3.7% following the release of its earnings results. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up, on the other side of the break.
So much book you need for high school?
I'll show you how to make sure you have all the money for my books and even some extra. It's called budgeting, Dad. Making a budget is the most important thing you can do to track your money. It keeps a record of how much you make, how much you spend, where you spend it, and most importantly, how much you can save. Write down all your income, write down all your expenses, see where you can cut down and allot more money to more important things, like saving.
And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, bilateral agreements to boost Jamaica-Ghana economic ties. Regionally, Dominica tables a $1.24 billion budget, and internationally, Trump says Japan-yen support benefits U.S. alliance. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.